Welcome to Intro to Public Records. I'm Sharon Crawford, and I will be your instructor for today. We are going to talk about Realist and how it is integrated with Matrix. So we will spend a little bit of time in the MLS going over that integration, and then we will jump into Realist, the full database, and we'll do a little bit of prospecting. I will show you how you can utilize Realist to set up geographic farming and all of that good stuff. I'm on the FGC MLS dashboard. This is your Clarity dashboard. When you enter your login credentials, your MLS ID, and your password, this is where you land on the dashboard. So we're going to jump right into the MLS, but we will be coming back out and jumping into Realist. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Go to MLS. So rather than taking class time to run a search, I'm just going to utilize one of my favorite searches right down here. I'm going to click on that search and open up a property from here. So when you run a search and you get your results display, this is the single line display that you see here. We can click on any one of these listings, and I'm just clicking on a random listing. I'm not being super particular about what we're working with. I just want to show you that Matrix and Realist, the tax records database, they're integrated together. And when you click on that MLS ID number and you go into the broker report, it's now referred to as the 360 property view, and that's because of that tax integration. So it used to be that, you would have to click out and go out into Realist to look at all the tax information. But now you have these tabs across the top of a listing. So this is an interesting one that I actually clicked on. I'm glad I did, because it's not often that I get the foreclosure tab. So we're just going to walk through these tabs really quickly. Now you can click on the tax tab, for example. We're going to go ahead and do that now. And the tax tab is going to open up that basic property information. So you're going to see that owner's name in the top, and you notice this one's actually currently bank owned because this property is in foreclosure currently. So we can see the owner of the property, and this is the Bank of New York currently. But you're always going to want to verify this information. When you get a call for a listing appointment, you can come in here and you can check out that owner's name. Just as a heads up, and this is not to scare anybody, but just to make you aware of some issues that are going on and some ways that you can protect yourself. If you should get an email or a text message with someone contacting you, wanting you to list their property, and this seems to be happening more on vacant land than it does on houses, on residential property. But if you get a call for that listing on vacant land, you're really going to want to do your research and make sure that you're talking to the actual owner of the property. One of the big red flags when someone contacts you to list their property and it's a scam is that they will not want to talk to you on the phone. So they'll do everything in the world to avoid that. They'll tell you, they're traveling or just whatever. They'll come up with every reason in the world to only talk to you via text message or email or some other digital communication. They're not going to want to talk to you on the phone, and they're certainly not going to want to talk to you in person. So just keep an eye out for that, because when you get those calls to list property, one of the first things you want to do is come in here and check out and make sure you're talking to the person who has the right to sell the property. So you will find that under that tax tab in every single listing in the MLS. Now, of course, you're going to come in here and look for properties that, let's just say, they've never been listed in the MLS before. There's a way you can search for those too. So let's back up just for a minute. When you come into Matrix and you're on your Matrix dashboard, you can search for properties that have never been listed in the MLS right here in Matrix. What you're going to do is go to that search option and select public record. Once you click on public record, you can enter the owner's information. You can enter their last name and their first name, for example, or you can just enter the street address for the property. So I've got my house number, I've got my street name, street type over here. And then sometimes you will find that you'll want to go ahead and enter the city or the zip code if you're not pulling anything. But if we click on results, you can see that while this property's never been listed in the MLS, we can click on that tax ID link, and that brings us into that tax information, just like we were seeing on a listing a moment ago. So I am going to go back to the dashboard and go back into our property right here. We were working with this property, and I have a question. Is there a way to run a report on foreclosed properties? You can run a search for foreclosed properties. Absolutely. So when you say run a report, if you can be more specific about what kind of report you want to run, if you're talking about just running a search for foreclosed properties, absolutely. And Realist is one of the places where you can do that. Again, if you'll recall, we're looking at a listing. We just pulled up a random listing that's in the MLS. We went to that tax record. So underneath the owner information, you're going to find the location information. This is going to include your subdivision name, and it's going to give you some other information. For example, this is a waterfront property, and you can see all of this. Now, when you're listing a property, as long as you fill the listing form from Realist Tax, it's going to pull all of this information into the listing for you. But this is a great way to double check that. The next thing you'll see in the tax record is going to be the estimated value. So this is really not any different than any other AVM or automated valuation model that you see when you're looking at consumer-facing real estate search sites like Zillow, for example. Everybody's familiar with the Zillow Zestimate. And here, what we have is the real AVM. And that real AVM is really just the trademark name that CoreLogic has for their AVM. So you will see that here we see 414, and then it gives us a high and low range. And over here on the right-hand side, we can see a confidence score. So always check the confidence score, because on its face, 75 might seem like a pretty good score. But what you have to keep in mind is that this is not on a scale from 0 to 100. If you read the fine print down here, you can quickly see this is on a scale from 60 to 100. So now all of a sudden that 75 is not looking so great. Now, when you're talking about automated valuation models, different sites like Zillow or Realtor.com, Black Knight, the list would just go on and on and on. They don't tell us the exact algorithms that they use to calculate their valuation. So we do know that they pull from MLS. We know that they pull from the tax records, but we don't know what their other valuation processes are. They don't share that information with us. So it works the same way here with the Realist automated valuation model. A lot of it has to do with the amount of activity going on immediately around the subject property. So if there's not a lot of market activity within a 1 mile radius or in the same subdivision as the subject property, you're going to tend to see those lower confidence scores. Scrolling on down, we get the property ID number and the strap number. You're going to see the year-over-year taxes for the past 3 years, and then additional characteristics of the property, the construction, that kind of information. Building features, so these are going to be add-ons. They might have been added on at the time of construction. In this case, they were, but sometimes you'll find that there'll be additions after the construction. And then, of course, additional building information down here in building description. So if I scroll back up to the top, you'll notice on this particular report, we've got all of these tabs. So we're still in that property 360 view. The next one is photos. Now, if you're pulling up a property that's never been listed in the MLS, you're not going to be able to click on the photos tab. It will still be there, but it will be grayed out, so you won't be able to click on it. Then we've got the history tab. This is a great tab to look at when you are doing some prospecting or you're thinking about reaching out to recently expired listings, terminated listings. If you come into the history tab before you set out on your marketing with that particular property, you can come in here and just ensure that it's not relisted. You might see that a property has expired, for example, and then you would come in here and you're going to look for this, the very top line. And if this very top line still has that X for expired, then you're in good shape to go ahead and market to that property. Or you might see a W for withdrawn. In a withdrawn status, a listing still has that listing agreement in place with their agent, but the property has been pulled temporarily off the market for some reason. So keep that in mind. This will help you before you go out there and start marketing to a property in that case. But you can find information here not only from the history of the MLS, but also from the public records. So you can see this property was built in 99. We saw that a moment ago. And then it changed hands in 02, again in 2018. We've got the mortgage history. So if you're, of course, this property is unique because it is in foreclosure. But normally, if you come in here and you're looking at the mortgage history, this is going to let you know their valuation, and then you can look at their mortgage history and it'll give you a bit of an idea of how much equity they might have in the home. And here we do see the foreclosure history. So in any other property, and I'll just click on one to show you, this will end with your mortgage history. But when you do have that foreclosure history, you're going to see that here. Now, a property can have a foreclosure in its history, but if it's not currently in some state of foreclosure, you won't see that. You won't be able, if I scroll back up here, you won't be able to click on this foreclosure tab, for instance. It will be grayed out. So again, the only time you're going to see this information is when it is currently in foreclosure. If we go to the parcel map, and this parcel map tab is going to be available on every listing in the MLS, you're going to see 3 maps. You're going to see that satellite view with the property pinned to the map. You can change the satellite view over to a street view if you want to, and you can see that property outlined here. The second map is going to give you the parcel dimensions, so you can see the front and the back. When you're entering a listing into the MLS, you are required to enter the lot dimensions. So this is a great place to see that. And of course, if you attend my MLS listing input class, I'll show you how you can actually find this information while you're putting the listing in the MLS without having to leave that page. And then right down at the bottom, you just get a bit of a larger view of the parcel. Drag and drop functionality with Google Street View. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So in this case, it is not working. And sometimes you will find that especially in gated communities, that you won't have that drag and drop functionality, but outside of the gated communities, you should be able to use that. The next tab we have here is going to be the flood map tab. And we will scroll down just a little bit. You'll notice that you have the color on the map that's going to show you the flood zone that the structure is located in, or the parcel is located in. And down at the bottom, you've got the legend that lets you know what that flood zone represents. So in this case, you're in the X flood zone. So you're just outside of any special flood area. And then you can see that information right up here at the top as well. And then, of course, the foreclosure tab, which we sometimes don't have. So here we can see that it's currently REO, real estate owned. We saw that it's Also, bank owned is another term, but we have Bank of New York as the owner of this property, and they are currently on the market. And then once again, we're going to see that foreclosure history. So I'm going to leave this property. I'm going to go back to our dashboard just so I can show you with a different property. And I'll just pick the one right next to it. So you see here, the foreclosure tab is grayed out. We don't have that foreclosure history. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what to expect when you're looking at that. So it will be currently in foreclosure if you can click on this tab. Now, another thing you're going to want to be aware of is here in the Realtor report, you've got the property ID. And in this case, it's a clickable link. It's going to take us back into a tax property report that looks almost identical to the one we just saw. But here, and let me just zoom in on this a little bit. There we go. Here in the tax information, you've got the property ID as a clickable link that takes you out to the county appraiser's office. In this case, that's LIPA. But if you were in Collier County, of course, it would take you out to the Collier County appraiser's office. So keep that in mind, because that's a great way to jump out directly into the appraiser's office without having to leave the listing. Underneath the photo of the listing, you are going to find additional tax tabs. So these tax tabs lead to some of the same information, but they're actually going to take us into the Realist database. So if I click on tax from here again, and you're probably thinking, wow, the redundancy, but it's really for your convenience so that you can enter the tax information from just different places depending on what you're doing. And again, this is going to be that clickable link that takes you out to the county appraiser's office. Right up here at the top under this particular link, you can see you can launch the full Realist database. You can look at comps. You can look at a neighborhood profile, which is going to give you the demographics of the neighborhood. And then right over here, you can choose to print this report for someone. And if you do choose to print the report from here, just be aware. Let me just go ahead and click on print. It's just moving a little bit slow. So keep in mind, if you print the report from here, it's going to print with all of your current owner information and everything. So you might want to have more control over that. And if you do, I'll show you how you can actually print that report. Let's go back to that tax link. I'll show you how you can print the report, but how you can withhold certain information. So I'll be showing that to you in just a moment. So we'll close that tab. Back on our listing tab, the next tab for tax is the assessor map. So if we click on that, that gives us a link where we can download the assessor map. And it's running just a bit slow today, so I appreciate your patience. I don't know why it's running slow, but it happens sometimes. And you can download that map from here. I'm not going to take the time to do that because I don't want to take up our class time. I do want to draw your attention to all of these tabs across the top, because now we're actually in Realist. So we can go back to the property details, which is that report that has the owner information, all of the characteristics of the property, that link that takes us out to LIPA. But I can also go to comparables. I can look at market trends for this subject property. I can see the neighbors. And when I say see the neighbors, I'll show you in just a moment how you can actually see the parcels right around the subject property, who owns them, when they purchased the property, and how much they paid for it. You've got the neighborhood profile, which is going to give you that demographic. And then we're currently on the assessor map, and you've got the flood map. And I'm just going to go ahead and close this tab because I want you to see how this is all going to pull together. Here you have that neighbor profile, the neighborhood profile. you've got comparables, and you've got market trends. So rather now than going back and forth, I'm just going to go ahead and click on neighborhood profile. It's going to take us back to a screen that's very similar to what we were just looking at, except of course we'll be on the neighborhood profile tab, but we'll be able to see and access all of those other tabs from here. So again, we're on the neighborhood profile tab, but you've got all those other tabs right up here. And so we'll just work from here on out. So the neighborhood profile, again, it's going to give you that demographic information. We can see for this particular property, we can see the estimated population, the population growth since 2010. That hopefully the 2020 census will update in the public records soon, and we'll be able to see that information. Not all of the information comes directly from the census. So some of it is way more up to date than 2010, and we can look on the various data points and see when they were most recently updated. The median age, number of households in the area. And of course, we're currently looking at this particular zip code in Lee County. If we scroll down this page, it's just going to give us that information. And I'm going to have to make the screen maybe just a little bit smaller to put this in a better context for you. But you can see, you're going to have some graphs here where you can see the population, the ages, and gender, marital status. You're going to find housing status, how many people own, rent, or at least the percentage of people that own versus rent, and then the vacant listings, annual turnover, residential turnover. And then if we scroll down, this fair market rents, going to continue to scroll down. We've got the quality of life. This is going to let us see the percentage of blue collar versus white collar employees and the types of work they do. Annual household income. And then we've got commute methods. So we can see that most people are driving to get to work. We've got weather. And then the average, median drive time. We have education. And this is going to be the education of the population that's in the area. If we scroll down, we're going to find schools in the area. And you're going to have two different ratings here. You're going to have the schooldigger.com rating. That school rating is based solely on standardized testing scores. And then you've got the community rating. So I call the community rating more of the touchy-feely rating. And the reason I say that is because this is how the people in the community feel about the school. So this is going to be staff. This is going to be parents and guardians. This is going to be even the students in some cases. So sometimes what you'll see is the standardized testing may be not so great, but the community rating is rather high. Or you might see it flipped around the other way. The standardized testing from School Digger, their rating is really high, but the community just still doesn't feel great about the school for whatever reason. So this is one source for getting that information about the schools in the area. Another great place to find information about schools, like you can really dig deep, is in RPR, Realtors Property Resource. So local businesses, this is going to pull in businesses that are nearby the subject property. So at the top, you're going to have attractions and recreation. You're going to find banks, restaurants, and bars, along with healthcare services and hospitality, and finally, shopping. You can customize these reports. You notice right up here in the top right-hand corner, you're going to have that on almost every one of these tabs. You can click Customize View, and this allows you to deselect information that you don't want to include in your report. So it's up to you what you might want to share or not share. But this allows you to come in and remove some information. Maybe the people you're working with, maybe they don't have children that are of school age, so you can click on that check mark to deselect it, and it will remove schools from your report. you would just click apply and then go back, and you can now print the report right down here at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. You could print the report, or you could email it and directly to your customer from here. But again, once you make those selections, whatever you select is what you will be printing or emailing. So when you remove that information, it's not going to go out to your customer. Let's go back to the left-hand side of this screen and click on the comparables tab, because you can pull comps from Realist if you want to. And the system is set up with some defaults, but you can change those. So what you're going to see when you come to the comparables tab is you're going to see your subject property. You can see that little black pin sort of hiding behind that number 1. So that's going to be our subject property. You'll have the map. You'll notice you've got the split view. That's what we're currently on, where we can see the map and the list of comps down here at the bottom. So if I click just on map, it's going to leave me with just the map. And if I click on list, I've just got the list. So I typically keep it on the split view. You can move this up and down. If you hover over the 3 dots right there in the center of the screen, you can click and drag and move these up and down if you want to change your view. The top right-hand portion is going to give you a summary of the comps that were pulled in. And then if we look through the list, we can see the individual comps that were pulled in. If you want to utilize this for your CMA, you can do that. I'm going to tell you, it's not the most attractive report, but it's something that you can pull together quickly in a pinch with relative ease. But you might want to go in and just check and make sure that you're pulling in comps that you want. You can do that by clicking on search criteria. And this is where you can change the default settings that Realist has used to pull comps in. So the first thing you can do is select the number of comps that you would want to return. The max is 50, the minimum is 5, and 30 is the system default. I'm just going to go ahead and change it to 20. And then you can choose your sort method. So do you want to pull from those properties that are closest to the subject property? So by distance, by most recent sales, by sale price, or by square footage, living area. So you can make your choice there. I usually keep mine set to choose by distance, the closest to the subject property. And then these are the items that you're choosing whether or not you want to include them in your CMA. So do you want to include property images? And that's both, that's going to be for all of the comps that you pull in and decide to use in your report. Do you want to include the projected value by assessment? Do you want to include the projected price per square foot or value by square foot? And that real AVM, which is, remember that real AVM is nothing more than a brand name, if you will, for the Realist automated valuation model. It's just a branded AVM, just like the Zillow's estimate. And the next thing we're going to choose is the data source. Now, I want to draw your attention. You can see that our data source is currently pulling from both the tax records and the MLS records. But if we scroll down a little bit on this screen, you can see that the tax or distressed sales and the geographic boundaries, those options are grayed out. If I scroll back up and I select my data source to be tax, if we scroll back down to that area, you can now see that this allows us to pull in or to exclude, if we choose to, those distressed properties. So distressed properties are those short sales, pre-foreclosure. And when I say pre-foreclosure, I simply mean that the lis pendens has been filed. So the lender has notified the seller that, or excuse me, the lender has notified the owner of the property that they do intend to foreclose. And then, of course, your REO, which we got to see that a little bit earlier. So your real estate owned properties, bank owned properties, those are all of your distressed statuses. Short sales, REOs, auction would be another one that you can include in that. So you have to have that tax as your data source in order to get that distressed sale. You can also utilize the geographic boundary. In this case, we could pull comps strictly from the same subdivision if we wanted to. So that allows you to do that. And then we've got site influence. So this is where you can pull in, if you want to pull in properties that are, let's say your subject property is on a canal or waterfront, and you only want to pull in properties that are canal waterfront properties as well. So keep that in mind, because that can be helpful. When I click over to just pull from the MLS, we scroll back down, you see I lose all of those options. I typically keep it set to both. And we still do have that site influence, which means you can pull in those water properties, but you won't be able to utilize the geographic geographic boundary, meaning you won't necessarily be able to just limit to the same subdivision. And there's a way you can do that. You can draw on the map and do that without using this, if that's something you do want to do. But it does eliminate any distressed sales. So if I scroll back up, pull, it's going to be, or it should be, whatever your subject property is. So if your subject property has a pool, you'll want to pull with a pool. And then you got your distance from the subject property. So you can start with as little as 1/10 of a mile and go out as far as 10 miles. But I've got this one set to 2. Most appraisers try to keep it at 1. But we would probably lose a lot of our comps if we did that. I'm going to go ahead and set it just to kind of see what happens. And then we've got some other things that you can decide. You can add in a price range, your built bedrooms, bathrooms, stories, and then that site influence. That's going to be an important one to use. And then how far back do you want to pull comps? You can go from 1 to 12 months, or you could select a date range. I'll leave mine on 12 months. You can choose your building, living square footage, building area, and this is going to be the differential that you would pull in. The system default is set at 20%. Most appraisers try to keep that at more like 15%. So that's something that you can change, but you might have to give yourself some flexibility if you don't pull in any comps when you set your search criteria. And then right down here for land use, I always keep mine set to same as subject, and that is the system default. And then if you wanted to enter the architectural style, you could do that. If you simply click submit, it's only going to utilize this search criteria that you've just ran for this particular listing. But if you click save and submit, it will change the system default to whatever you enter here. I'm just going to go ahead and click submit. And then we still do have some properties, but it only, look at that, it took away a bunch of our comps. And a lot of that probably had to do with the fact that we changed this from 1 mile radius to, from a 2 mile radius to a 1 mile radius. So I just wanted to demonstrate that for you. If we had all of those comps back, right over here, you've got a select all button. And then you can select or deselect any properties by clicking the checkbox that you do not want to use. And I am just going to go back just for demo purposes for you guys. We'll change that back to 30, and we'll change that back to 2 miles, and go ahead and click submit, because I want to show you, I want you to have a better idea of what this is going to look like when you generate the report. Oh, by the way, the customized view just allows you to remove certain items that you may or may not want to include in your report. So if you want to remove the summary stats or the map, And if you want to remove your search criteria from your report, you can do that. It won't show the search criteria. You can click apply, and then we'll generate this report right down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And so this is exactly what your report would look like. And you can see it's got that map right up there at the top. If we scroll down, those are your summary stats. And then it's got your subject property, and then it's pulling in your comps. You notice the one thing you cannot do here is you can't make adjustments in Realist for comps. Right down here, you can print it, or you can email it directly to your customer if you choose that in the chat panel. We'll move on to market trends. Market trends is going to give you some overview stats right up here at the top, and it's pulling information from the zip code of your subject property. It's pulling from the city of Fort Myers, so it's going to be the city of your subject property and the county of your subject property. So you've got the dials, and it's going to show you for the most recent months reporting. So here, the most recent month's full reporting is February, and we can see that in February, in this zip code, 52 homes closed. And if we look down below at the 5-year February average, it's 55. So that wasn't way off of the norm, even in this market. The median sales. So what you're seeing is the median sale price in February of 2022 was $372.5. Now that is dramatic. The 5-year average for February was $272 and $90. So we might as well say 272.1, right? And so that's pretty dramatic increase. And then you've got active listings. Now this is crazy. In February of 22, only 25 listings went active on the market, while in February for the 5-year, now that's a 5-year rolling average, that's 251 is what you would typically see. Median days to contract, only 13 days compared to 46 over 5 years. The median sale price per square foot would have been $219 per square foot in February of this year, while that 5-year average was at $155. And then the sale price to list price ratio, and it is a little over 100%. If we pulled only from the MLS records and left the tax records out of that, it would probably be, we'd probably see a higher figure here than that 100.3, but that 5-year average was at 95.2. So some good overview information of what's been going on in this market. And then you scroll down and it's just going to break that information down. You can hover your mouse over the varying data points, and it's going to show you that the very specific information. So in this case, we're looking at median sale price from the tax records for the county, the city, and the zip code. The purple is the zip code, and then the county's in blue. As you can see, the city's in red. But you can see here, you also can look at that from the MLS. So if we look at, for example, if we wanted to hover over that data point for the zip code, in November of 21, we are at 346.5. And from the MLS, we're at 372.5. So you can see the difference there. So that's why it has it broken down for you, the difference between the tax sales, because keep in mind, this is going to include those distressed sales like our foreclosure that we were looking at earlier. It's going to include when property changes hands amongst family members, those quick claim deeds and things of that nature. So it's going to pull in those sales where the sale amount isn't what it would typically be at market value. Continuing to scroll, you've got the median sale to original list price ratio, the MLS, and from the tax records, a price per square foot, number of sales from the tax records, change in sales activity from the tax records, the total number of sales, and then the change in sales activity over the last year. And that is your market trends. If we scroll all the way back to the top, we can see, that overview right down here at the bottom. You can print, but this one's not customizable like some of the ones that we had before. This is going to be a static report, so it's going to pull everything that you see here. The next tab is going to be that neighbors tab that we've got some people that are a little curious about. So it's going to pull in your subject property, and then it's going to show you neighbor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we look at the map, we can zoom in on that map and we can see here's neighbor 1. And then on the other side of the property is 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 jumps to across the street. I only point that out because they're, not lined up like you might expect. And then down here at the bottom, you can look and see what that property address is, the owner's name, when they purchased the home, what they purchased it for. And if you continue to scroll down, you can see the year built, the tax amount, and the total assessed value. The distance from the subject property. You can use this little arrow, and I'm going to scroll up just a bit. So you can use this little arrow to scroll through those properties to look at each one of those neighbors. You can change the search criteria. So this is currently set to pull in 20 neighbors. You can pull in up to 30. You can change the distance from the subject property up to 3 miles, from 1/10 of a mile up to 3 miles. You can include a geographic boundary. So if you want to pull in up to 2 miles, for example, depending on the size of the property, but you only want to pull from the same subdivision, you can apply both of those. And then you can choose whether or not you want to include the property images. So you can save and submit, which will set that up as your default. But if you just click submit, it's only going to change it for this one report. Then you can, again, print the report right down here at the bottom, or you can email that report. Then we've got the neighborhood profile, which is going to give us the demographic, and we already saw that just a moment ago. We saw the assessor map earlier as well. We can download that assessor map. And then we've got the flood map, and we looked at the flood map, but we looked at it in a different location. You can customize the view right here, just like you do for some of the other reports. And then you can print this report right down here at the bottom, or you can email the report if you choose to. So I am closing this tab because those are all of the tabs that are available in Realist. You've got your quick links right here in the listing to several of those reports. But remember, once you click on one of these, you can very easily get to the others. Any questions before we leave Realist? If you click on view comparable properties from here, it's the same as clicking here, just so you're aware. And if we don't have any questions, then I am going to close this tab. That's going to close Matrix down. And I am going to click on Realist. This is going to take us into the full Realist database. One of the big questions that we get when people come into Realist and they enter, maybe someone has contacted you and to come out and do a listing appointment, and you open Realist and you enter their name or you enter the property address, and it's not coming up. One of the big things is found right up here. It's a matter of selecting the county. So you'll want to click on change county. You can select up to 8 counties and keep them there all the time if you want to. So you'll see I have Lee, Collier, and Charlotte, but you'll notice you have all 64 counties for the state of Florida. And what that means is you can actually see all of the tax information and characteristics on every single parcel in the entire state of Florida, whether it's residential or commercial, it doesn't matter. You can see every parcel in the entire state of Florida, but you can only select up to 8 at a time. So once you make your selections, click apply, and just keep in mind that if you come in here and you begin to do a search and it's not pulling the property, just remember to check your county. When you first open Realist, it lands automatically on this quick search. And basically the only thing you're going to be doing in the quick search is that initial property lookup. If you want to do anything deeper than that, like your geographic farming, you're going to want to switch over to the My Search tab. And this is where you can begin to add the information that you want to include in your geographic farming. When you add, this is the search form over here on the left-hand side of the screen. This little area that you see here, this is your search form. So there are going to be several fields there that are part of your Realist default. But if you scroll down and you find that there's something that you want to add to your geographic farming that is not already here, then you're going to need to click here on Customize Search to find those fields that you want to add. When you click on Customize Search, it brings you into the All Categories tab. This is every single field that you could possibly add. You can have up to 30 attributes, and here in Realist, they're referred to as attributes, and in Matrix, they're referred to as your search criteria. So it's one and the same. Those terms are interchangeable, but I find it difficult to look at all categories. It really helps if you kind of know generally what you're wanting to pull in, because in that way you can go, for example, to the owner information. And I keep all of these selected just so that I have them available for any kind of farming that I would be doing. All 6 of them are going to be readily available for me. And then under geography, you can see the items that I have selected here. The big one, if you want to do your geographic farming by subdivision, is to make sure that under geography, you are selecting subdivision. And then, of course, any other information that you might want to add as far as, if I wanted to farm a zip code. So that's what you're kind of thinking of. How do I want to enter the information that I want to farm? What do I want to pull it from? So if you want to farm a zip code or subdivision, this is where you would add that from a subdivision. We're going to farm or prospect a subdivision where the owner is owner occupied and they've had the property for more than 20 years. So, that helps us to think that they might have some equity in the home. And it's going to be a larger home. So it's going to be at least like 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. And, maybe they're looking to downsize. By the same token, you could flip that script and you could find those that have owned their property for 7 to 10 years. So they're also owner occupied, but then your building square footage in this case would maybe be smaller, like 1,200 square feet or something like that. So that's why you would want to indicate your building square footage so that you could pull in those houses that would help you to locate those people that might be ready to upgrade. But then, like I said, on the first case, the one I'm going to demonstrate first is where they're looking to downsize. Any other information that you might want to pull into that prospecting, you can do that here. That has to do with the characteristics of the property. And then listing information. If you want to add MLS status to that, you can. And then, of course, tax, if that's important, sales information, you definitely want to include the last sale date. So sale date, you can include the sale price if that's going to be something you're going to farm on. And then the foreclosed and distressed. So if you're working with a investor and you want to pull in auction properties, for example, foreclosed, anything, any state of foreclosure, you can pull that information in. And then if any of the mortgage information, the only thing would be the lender name. So that wouldn't really have anything to do with your farming. So you select everything you want here. Of course, you click apply. As you add those items, everything that you add is going to populate at the bottom of the search form that's already there. We are going to prospect, do some prospecting. Some people refer to it as farming in a specific subdivision. So we can click on our pick list. We want to know that subdivision. We want to know the name of it. So you'll have to have a name of it. I'm going to use Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks, and I'm going to click that search. A lot of people will type it in, and if nothing pops up, they think it's not working because we're so used to these databases that as soon as you start typing it in, it automatically populates for us. But we do have to click that magnifying glass to run that search. So this is going to pull in everything that has Fiddlesticks in the subdivision name. And I want to draw your attention to something. I want to do my prospecting in the Fiddlesticks Country Club. So I'm going to make that selection, but look right here. Here we have Fiddlesticks Country Club sub. Now, this is the exact same subdivision. It's one and the same, but based on the way someone entered the information, potentially in the MLS or some other source, depending on how they enter the information, either in their MLS listing or in the tax records, it will change that so that when you're farming the subdivision, you're just going to make sure that you're pulling everything in that is a match. The next little item that we're going to utilize is going to be our sale date. So we decided that we wanted to make sure that the home had been occupied for at least 20 years. To change that year date, I'm just going to click on the down arrow right there in the middle of the calendar. And now I can use the arrows on each side to go back in time to 2002. There we go. And then we're in March. So I'll go ahead and select March. And then you do have to select a date. So I'll just select the 1st. So this is going to be the last sale date is less than. You do have these operators over here that you can change. Is greater than, is less than, is between. So you could search within a date range. So I'm leaving that as less than 2002. Owner occupied, I'm going to click on select that from the list. And that's going to be a simple yes or no. And we're going to enter a yes on that one. Our square footage. So it's always going to say building square footage. So it refers to it as building rather than living square footage. So we can enter a square footage, and remember our scenario, we're farming or prospecting to people that have been in their home for more than 20 years. It's a large home and maybe they're looking to downsize. So we'll go ahead and enter 2,500 square feet. It might be larger than that, of course, but these are just use case scenarios. So we'll put is greater than. And I think we've entered everything we need to enter for this particular search. And so now all we have to do is click the search button right down there at the bottom of the screen. And we see we have pulled in everything that matched our criteria, but we can also see up here on our map that it has pulled in some that are currently active on the MLS. We can see that little green bubble. We can see the yellow one over here. You can also scroll through the list to find those. The red ones, you don't have to worry about. They have the sold bubble on there, the marker bubble. It's on there, but we put the sold date in, so we don't have to worry about that. Even if we don't see the sold, right? We don't have to worry about that. So you can scroll through here, and what we're going to do is when we run across those green and yellow, by the way, you can hover over the bubbles and it'll show you there's an expired listing. And here we've got a pending listing. So we're going to remove that check mark. We don't want to mark it to that property owner. And if you hover again, you hover over those bubbles, you can see sold, pending, and then expired. So that gives you an idea of what you're looking for. And now we're looking for, there's that green one. So this one is an active listing. So we'll remove that check mark. And we'll continue to scroll just to make sure there's nothing else. And everything else looks good. You can see they also were taken down from the map. And we can choose what we want to do from here. We can export these. We can do a quick export. It'll pull in the 26 attributes that we see here on the grid. And you notice you get 12,500 exports per month. So this will subtract 78. We had 80 results initially. So we removed 2. So we've got 78 in this export. So this is just a really quick export. That's one thing we can do. Or we can do a customized export. And this allows us to select the fields that we want to include in our export. So we can create a new export and we can select the fields that we want to pull in to our export manually. That's up to you. And then of course you can save it and give it a name. I'm going to cancel that. Of course, you could print this if you wanted to, or you could email it, but we're going to click on labels. You can print your mailing labels from right here. And even if you're not using Avery mailing labels, whatever mailing label you are using on the packaging, it will tell you which of the Avery labels it is compatible with. So even if you did a different brand name, it'll say compatible with Avery 51, 60, 61, or 62. Then you can choose your case, and I always recommend the use mixed case. And now, we're not marketing to properties where the owner is not residing in the property, but if we were, we would want to make sure that we were utilizing the tax billing address. In this case, it doesn't matter. We could use either one because they're going to be one and the same because it's owner occupied. But if I am mailing to renters, right? If I'm looking for renters, then I would use the property address. But if I'm marketing to the owner of the property, just go ahead and use tax billing. You can show the current owner, which we're going to do. This is not going to include any foreign addresses, but if we were doing not occupied owner, pulling properties that aren't occupied by the owner, we would certainly want to include those foreign addresses. And then it's always a good idea to eliminate duplicate labels depending on the subdivision that you're marketing to. You may find that a single individual owns more than one parcel, and there's no point in sending that person multiple mailers. So once you've made all of your selections here, you can see it's pulling from your report. Now we're going to do all 78, but you could do a range. Let's say you pulled in 500 results. You could select a range, and maybe you could do the first 100 and then come back later and do the next 100. It's up to you how you choose to do that, but that is an option. We'll do all 78 by clicking create. That is opening in a Word document right down here. I'm just going to click and open that Word document. and show you what that looks like. Now, I do get calls sometimes because people are attempting to export or print their mailing labels, and the device that you're using doesn't have Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel. If you don't have Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, this is not going to work for you. So you might want to consider getting that on your device. I mean, you can get them now in apps. It's different than it used to be, where the software was really crazy expensive. So it's definitely worth it to be able to do that. And of course, you can use it for a lot of other things other than just Realist. But there you go. That was one scenario. I do have a question. If you'd like to geo-farm your specific neighborhood, but you aren't in a subdivision, just say Cape Coral, how else can you narrow down to your vicinity? The easiest way to do that would be, well, first of all, let's clear off. I'm going to clear all. Keep in mind, after you run a search, and you're going to want to do this every time you start a new search, because if you don't, it's going to hold your old criteria. So I'm going to click on clear all. It's removing all of the search criteria that I just added. And now I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to zoom out on my map. Actually, I'm going to change this to just the map view for a moment by clicking on map. And I am going to move my map over here to Cape Coral. And then I'm going to zoom back in just a little bit. So depending on where you want to work in Cape Coral, you've got your drawing tools. So if you click on that pencil icon, you do have your drawing tools. You can use the rectangle, that's easy, but the polygon is great for drawing around some really specific areas. So I can click on that polygon tool, and let's just say I'm going to click there. The thing about the polygon tool is every time you want to change directions, you have to click. So I'm clicking again, and I am clicking again and again and again and again. And then I'm going to stop where I started. You have to stop where you started. So that's how you use the polygon tool. So now we've drawn out the area that we want to farm. We don't have to name anything down here, but what we can do is we can add in some other criteria. So let's just say, for example, if we do sale date, we'll go ahead and do, let's just do 10 years this time. So we'll go back to 2012. And I'll do January 1st of 2012. And we'll do that as less than. We'll look for owner not occupied. We'll say owner occupied no. And then we can add in additional search criteria as you see fit. It's going to be up to you what you might want to add or not add. It's up to you. You can add what it's all about. Your target market, your target audience. I'm just going to go ahead and click search. So we see our results here. If we click over to the list view, you can see those very quickly and easily. You can scroll through these, or you can go back to that split view. And I'm going to go back to the list view down here. And of course, you're going to scroll through and remove the actives. Easier to scroll by clicking over here on the bottom right-hand side. So there's an active. I'm removing these active listing check marks, and you can see it's taking them off of the map as well. Continue to scroll. There's that pending listing. We want to remove that. I think that gets all of them. We pulled in 125 and we removed 4, so we've got 121. And of course, we can go out here and click on our mailing labels. We're going to use that tax mailing address like we did before. and click on create. We are opening our Word document. And this time we will see some other addresses. So Miami, Louisville, Kentucky, Illinois, New Jersey. You might see some foreign addresses on here because I did select to include those. Here's New York, Wisconsin, and looks like we got questions. Can you show how to upload the labels to Excel? That is going to be done by clicking on export. And the best way is just to go ahead and click on the quick export. To me, it's easier to click on quick export and remove items here than it is to go the other way around. But you can do whatever you want to do. But you just click on export, deselect anything that you don't necessarily need to pull in, and just click on export. It's going to pull that into an Excel spreadsheet. And then of course, you're going to have to click and drag these out. You can move these around. I didn't mean to leave that in there. So you can delete, for example, and we knew that none of these were in foreclosure. So we can delete that, and we can delete distressed. And then you start getting into your property address. You can move these around. You can sort them by owner name, for example, and choose how you want to pull this into your spreadsheet. But it's just a couple of clicks. You just click on export, choose what you want, and export again. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much. You guys have a fantastic day. Happy selling. Bye now.